flavors, but most likely kind of the best way to say it is we do lots of beers that are within a closed, safe, single cell place like fermenters so that no outside air gets in. And we're a big major production facility. We got, 25, 60 barrel fermenters and full, fill tech canning line and 100 cans per minute. And so it's a major manufacturing business. And then on the side, and that was great. And that's awesome. And I love it so much, but there was still like this, this wanting to innovate and kind of go and really push the levels of flavor. And so that's when I became really good friends with a lot of my friends in Belgium, and really got into like spontaneous lambic goose creations and really about utilizing the air and the spontaneity and the craziness of things and really kind of like pushing the levels of flavor. In a clean environment, we kind of, we isolate everything into like being this very bold flavor, or like the hops are always a showcase and then the malt, and it kind of comes in that way, where there's this other world of the spontaneous of like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's blend it. Let's add some of this. Let's go to my neighbor's house and grab walnuts in the ground and cool ship it and kind of see, and like pushing the levels of flavor. Like I often say that you can have like, you can use a puree and make a, whatever it is, like a flavored mango something. But then when you get into the world of the levels of flavors, or the depth of flavors you get from doing spontaneous stuff, and you get like the depth and like the barnyard. And if you strategically level that in a creation, you can really get that sense of like what overripe fruit tastes like. And so that has always intrigued me. And so I've been really pushing those boundaries along with, innovating, because the world of mixed culture is like an unhinged, style of like doing anything you want, and like, growing a cherry tree in your front yard, blending cherries, becoming friends with all the vineyards and picking your own cherries and doing carbonic maceration, and just kind of like that, back to that, like, that hands-on, really like the core of what it is to be a craft brewery and boutique brewery and craziness. And so that's what that one kind of engulfs. And so it's just been really fun, balancing two worlds and being able to be innovative and creative and taking it as far as you can.
I love it, man. And I suppose straight off the bat, the big question is, why separate? Why not just do them under the one name? Surely that's much easier, right? Just roll out under one brewery name, and it's just easier to manage.
Yeah, there's, along with like how much, kind of like all that stuff I just said, like all that hands-on stuff really kind of comes down to like where it's like really kind of the root rawness of beer, in my opinion. Like, like how old is lambic? Like it's using air. There's no like, there's no like lab grown anything. It's using the air and technique to make this stuff go in the proper way, in the proper direction. And within that, it's like, Prize's brand is very refined. There's a reason for, if you go to like a liquor store partner and you do a pass, there's a reason why those are like bold, bright colors. And so you're going to be like, oh, look at that thing. I want that thing, And so like, and if you look at all the different brands that a production brewery has, you'll see that mainly every brand that they create is like, it's a different color. So you'll see your light blue, you'll see your like red, your green for Pilsner or for IPAs, and you'll see the difference between them. And then when you look at something like Idle Forest, it's like chicken scratch, and that's kind of what it is. It's very hard, It's like, and then what's cool about that, in that kind of like, we'll call it like artist drawing or rendering of the brand, it's very boutique-y and it's very special, and those things take a lot of time. And so just kind of like putting the care, everything's bottle conditioned, so it's in a bottle, which requires a label. And some of these beers take 2.5 to 3.5 years, and so it goes on the linen paper, and it's very nicely done. And since we're looking at a bottle, like I got a bottle here, so like if you see like the bottle, I mean, it looks like a wine bottle. So like lots of things that also attract you, but in more of a artist simplistic way that you can see that, this took a lot more time. Like in my background, you can't really see it, but like I'm actually labeling the labels one by one, like each bottle. So like in the difference, we have something that's like printed by a can company of, 200,000 cans versus, here's your 1,000 bottles. Here's your like 1,000 labels. These bottles have been conditioned for 1.5 years. So it's just kind of like the difference between something being clean and bold and something being like nice and elegant. And I felt like that was a very big distinct difference between the two. And so therefore Idle Forest, Prize, obviously Prize Brewing being my last name, It's where it all started. It's kind of the foundation of things. And then we'll call it the machine. And then we have Idle Forest, which is the, 1 day a week obligation, the single-handed craft labeled on Idle Forest. So it spells IDYLL, and Idle stands for an unsustainable picturesque scene, which I identify with being mixed culture and spontaneous. Mm-hmm. And then forest, and the forest meaning like the world where I get all of my ingredients, whether it's like, dragon fruit from Vietnam to, just whatever fruit, to like even being local here where I get like grapes from the vineyard to, grapes from like California, or, passion fruit or whatever it is. It's kind of like an unhinged forest of where all my stuff is. And then, yeah.
I love it. So there's clear separation between the styles, the process, the visual side of things, but also the drinker. Are they two very different types of drinker that you're trying to appeal to with the two different brands?
Yeah, it's a great question. They are two different people. I think that there's two ways I look at it, and how I see it is that when you go into a tap room, the way the laws are set up here in Minnesota is you can only have one tap room. And so if you go to a bar, we'll call it, they have, several things that apply to all drinkers, right? Like, so you have like the whiskey drinkers and, the beer drinkers and whatnot. But in the tap room, we can't, as a production facility, we can't have any other, like we'll call it, visitor breweries in our place. So we can't host something else from somebody else. It's a weird law, but that's just how it is. But here, this allows us in this program, since we're producing it here, to hit like the wine drinker, right? Like, I mean, some of these tastes, like when I'm doing a wine hybrid, for like 2.5 years, and it comes out beautiful. Like the people that are wine drinkers talk about the tannins in it, the dryness of it, because Brett and Spontaneous dries things out. And so we've noticed that, and also that in the tap room, we've also complimented those people by giving them a different glassware too, because it is kind of like, it is when they grab our glassware, it's like being at home, because, typical wine glasses do have, the tulip to them, and they have the stem, and then it just kind of like, it embodies the whole, their experience wherever they would go. And so it's really being really, forward with them and being it. And then you also have the clean beer drinker that also tends to want to try something new. And so it's funny when you see the tap room, and you'll see the stem glasses, and then you'll see like the Belgian tulip, and like people try it, and like it's great because we have something for people to explore. We have education, so people can, try a different thing to their palate versus their typical, like, West Coast IPA or hazy or whatever. And they have something that just kind of like levels it. And what's cool about it is it's branded differently, because you'll see it's different, right? The whole experience is different. It's bottle conditioned. It's like, instead of being forced carb and having big explosive carbonic acid, like this big bubbly carbonated Pilsner, you have like this naturally carbonated, very small bubble. So like even the presentation is really nice. And so we've got a lot of people that really enjoy it. And it's not the biggest business, but it's definitely like something that I think that, if I walk in and people say, dude, Idle Force is unbelievable. And I'm like, hey, I know like their palate and how they're identifying with, versus people are like, dude, Miraculum is like my gateway craft beer to the world. And I'm like, cool, IPA drinker. I know how to like talk to them in relatable value. And it's been really, really fun.
So that's mad to think that, like, even based on which one they're choosing, the kind of the language you're going to use, what you're going to talk about. So you've got like the whole conversation planned out in your head, depending on what kind of drinker you've got in your tap room. I think.
Well, right now I'm in Idle Forest, right? So I talk fooders and whatever. When I'm at Price Brewing and I'm saying brewing the beer and I'm getting off of work and I'm going to have my daily beer, I'll be like, hey, like let's talk about hops. Boy, they're really changing this hop to be this or whatever. So they're both very like relatable to their own different stems and their own techniques and stuff. And, maybe somebody that wants to drink a Pilsner doesn't want to talk about how you cool ship in the fall, and so it's pretty fun.
So I'm just thinking like how it might not be as a dramatic difference between the beers that you're producing, but you get a lot of cask breweries here who might then explore keg beer. Sure. And them and themselves, they'll have the different glassware and potentially a different kind of drinker, maybe not so dramatic, but still a different kind of drinker. But they normally do that because there's a business rationale behind it going, we probably want to expand our reach, and this seems like a logical thing to do. Am I right in thinking that Idle Forest was more like an itch you needed to scratch, like it was a passion project?
Yeah, I mean, I've been professionally brewing for, like it's going like 14 years now, and then before that, I was a home brewer, just like lots of people, and then I went to college for brewing, and this was kind of like the unexplored. It's kind of like the black hole where you can just like you don't even know what's on the other side, and like also like when I make my pilsner or I make an IPA, I know exactly, like so many people drink it. It's my job as a clean brewer to make it exactly what the customer every time they buy it, it's got to be the same experience. Where this you can't do it. So it's really about an exploration. It's an adventure. Like I have different vintages for every year. So like this year's soiree is going to taste different from last year based upon being the fooders and the barrels and whatnot. So like it's as much as it's fun for people to try it, it's also fun for me because I'm like, hey, let's open this bottle, and they're like, what's it like? I'm like, I don't know yet. Like it's
Let's find out together.
It's been sealed for 8 months. I have to see. Like this takes a long time, and so. It's just great. It's like it's great. This was like, it's like the unhinged thing. And so along with how those beers changes, I've also changed the labeling and put a lot of Easter eggs in there and the evolution of time. And there's lots of things that I give credit to, just like, living day to day, that I try to like, as like a visual artist, try to like instruct and skew and make it fun for people that ever notice it, if they ever do.
Yeah, because I remember us talking about that, before, whilst we were setting up this call. Obviously, the amount of time it takes to create, one of these bottles, and the seasons that you've got. Like, would you mind sharing with the listeners? Kind of, there's some real nuance between, I remember you talking about the trees and the colors and the patterns and some of the characters. Like, can you break down that thought process and what goes into each label, please?
Sure. So at Idle Forest, we have, and if you want to check out the website, it's just idleforest.com. So IDYLL, Forest, ORST.com. And you'll see that I have a bunch of different series, right? Because I'm trying to make it so that it's understandable versus me just coming out with a bunch of weird ideas. Is try to focus on certain things, because even in this boutique, we'll call it boutique series or craftsman series, people identify like maybe like the cider hybrids, or maybe like the wine hybrids, or they maybe just like the vintage ones where or the mixed cultured ones where I'll take it and then I'll blend it with whatever kind of fruit. So mainly kind of goes off on those three ones. And so what I've done is, if you look on the website, and you'll see the images that based upon the wine hybrids, everything's in a cycle. And so how I want to identify the cycle, or like we'll call it the birth to death of like a fruit, like, right? It starts as a little seed, and then it grows, and eventually, comes overripened, comes to its best, and eventually withers away, and perishes. So like basically I have that with I took trees that are in my area, and then I have the artisan drawn, and what happens is those trees get older. And so one will be, like 4 years ago will be season 1, which will be like, we'll call it like a late winter. And then season 2 will be the spring. And so like, I don't know if people notice this unless you have all the bottles in front of you, which is why I had a website so that people can see it. Like the next one is actually the spring, so like the budding of things, and then we'll have like a summer, which is the full potential that the tree will have with its canopy, and then we have the cool color change into fall. And so again, to my example, like this is the fall of my rosé, which is onegris, which means dreamlike. And so this right here is in its fall phase, and then the tree will go away. And then that's kind of like, and then I was like, well, if I'm going to do this for one, I then have to do this for all of them, because it's like an Easter egg story to it. And then another one is where I have a friend in southern Minnesota that has 100 apple trees that people aren't using. So I was like, hey, I have a use for those. And so then I go down there, and if you go to Instagram for Idle Forest, you'll see the process I do. I'm very open about the whole process, because I think it's just fascinating. But the imagery on there, and I actually have it with me right here, is like it's actually the truck, and we are going to get it. And so the name of it's Routes to Cider. And so I thought that was fun, because that shows that we are literally in a truck driving to go get the cider juice. We press and do everything on site, and then we drive everything back for fermentation. And then we have another thing for the cider hybrids, which is Cider Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we do a collaboration with other cideries. And so on the imagery of that label, the tree is giving us the cider. So it's their pressed apples. And then we're grabbing that, call it sugar, and then taking that and processing it here at Idle Forest and Price Brewing. And so then at that point, it's the thought of the words that describe the action. And the action is either we're picking the apples or our friends are giving us the apple cider or apple juice, whatever you want to call it, and then processing it and then coming out with a collaboration. And then lastly, then we have our initial ones is how we started out, is getting it so that our forest is actually our whole landscape. So it's everything that, like, where are we in the forest? And so I have another version here for you because I just had these. And then so it basically shows you that this is the forest. And then we have our animal. So this is our blueberry, which is Le Bois des Rêves. By the way, everything's in French for two reasons. One, everything starts with French Bordeaux barrels. And second, in the States here, if you want to make a name for a beer, it's like next to impossible to be the original because you'll just get sued for something. So this, like, all of my French words have never been taken. So I was like, all right, sweet. This one's free. This one's available. This is available. So that's been very helpful.
That's a great hack for naming your beers going forward. Just pick a different language. You're going to be laughing.
Language. Although, it causes interest, which is fun, but it also causes the confusion. Like, what does this mean? So in identifying that, I've also, on the back of what it stands for, like, you see the front of it, it says what it is. And then, like, Champs de Framboise, right? And then on the back of it, when I do the description of it, it will then say, in English, you'll say, in quotes, this is what it means, and then I'll go into the description of what it is. And so that's just and we have one more. And then I was trying to figure out how could I push it a little bit further. And so if I have one series with fruit, and then I have one series where it's like, we'll call it vino based, and then I have one that's based upon just doing the cider. I did ones where I started doing here's one right here with the teardrop. And since this is for marketing purposes, the teardrop, this isn't a tree like we do usually our wine hybrids. What this identifies with as the drop is that it's the wine hybrid label, but the tree in the background is actually, like, this, for example, is an orange tree, right? And so this is that Satsuma orange tree, and the drop means that I'm adding something more besides just grapes to the wine hybrid series. And so I've identified it by putting a drop. And so, like, we've had a couple that I've done since that where I've taken, like, a Petite Syrah and added, like, blackberries to it, and it's a blackberry bush. And so I just try to, like, elevate it a little bit more, that somebody, if they have curiosity to it, it's just like an extra thing of why, in this day and age, I'd say it's very hard to do anything for anybody to take a moment and read something, because everybody just, like, walks past everything. But I think that for the drinkers that really want, like, this is hard work. Oh, I love how complex this flavor is and the depth of flavor. That person will generally, like, read the label, and then I'll get messages on Instagram or something. They're like, dude, is this on purpose? And I'm like, actually, that's amazing that you found that. So that's been really fun. But when you look at, like, cans or, like, the bold colors, I would tend to think that less people would just be like, Pilsner, done. What hops? Done. And so it's just a little bit different. And entirely, this just kind of makes me believe that this is definitely a very unique experience, thus separation, thus identifying the people. Like, I'll see people in the tap room having, like, 2 or 3, and they're just sticking with Idle Forest. And I know at that point that I'm like, this person really loves this depth of flavor. And it's great to see. And it's great that, especially in this industry today, like, the support that, both brands have, it's an honor.
I think that just the level of detail that you go through, like those almost Easter eggs and the little treats that you're hiding in the labels for Idle Forest, and then you're like, yeah, but on price it's just like, done, happy days. Like, there must be some element of that same kind of thought process that you put into the prize stuff, right? Or is it just is it that simple where you're just like, nope, another can, go.
Yeah, I'm not saying that doesn't, like, prize and have it, but we've just, as a brewery, we became incorporated in 2012, and if you're walking to a liquor store and you're going to buy something, whatever it is, you're looking for the same can. So, like, those cans can never change, right? And so, like, once you design it and once you produce it and put it in the can, like that can has to stay the same every single time. That's like, based upon, brand awareness and stuff. And once you set that, so that can is like, like 10 years old, and like it's 4.4% alcohol. It's 74 IBUs. This is what it is. Like I love Miraculum. I love all my clean beers. But when you have here, this is just more like this, by making it a separate brand, allows the ability to change, right? Like as spontaneous and as representative of it, it's a different brand. Like we can come up with new brands for Prize, like we do all the time. We just came out with a West Coast IPA, which is called Glamorama. But like, if you love Glamorama, you don't want that to change. You want that in your refrigerator. Like that's the depth of knowing, or how much work it takes to build those brands, are just a massive scale of so many people and advertising and outreach and all the stuff that comes into that. This one, like Idle Forest, is like fun. It's playful. It's unhinged. It's different every year. If somebody goes like, "Oh man, I really loved it last year, but this one tastes off," and I'm like that. I mean, that's Idle Forest, right? Like what this tastes like in 6 months, in 6 months it'll taste different, right? Because it is millions and millions and billions of bacteria that were in the air at that given day. It's a celebration for the day, right? Like whenever I cool ship that beer, where a Prize on the other side is like, like I pitched that yeast. I know exactly what it's going to do. I've changed the pH. I've done this. I have changed it based upon how much malt I have in the silo, or I've changed it based upon the alpha acids of that year's hops. And so like, it's just very different in like the way that is about consistency. And this is not about consistency. This is about letting it go and seeing what happens and kind of going on the journey with it. So.
And so obviously you say like Prize has been going for quite some time now, and Idle is a relatively new venture. So all this creativity, all these layers of, thought and consideration that have gone into Idle, is that just, have they been bubbling up for the years where you're like, oh man, I wish I did that for Prize, but I can't. And so now I'm going to channel it all into this new project?
This is, 100% accurate. I was like, we can do this. I'm like, no, we can't change that anymore. I'm like, but here now I can, right? Like, it really just, it embodies the enhancement and the changes. Like I order my labels every year, right? So like, but they're all different. Like I'm like, change this, tweak this, like also we'll call it like in the Prize world, there's so many people working on stuff. I mean, there's marketing, there's this, there's that, there's so many people. Here it's just like me and a guy. Like, so like when we want to communicate the new thing, it's like, hey, I'm gonna do this. Okay. Right. Prize is more difficult. It's just more. It's not that it's more difficult. There's just more people and more things that you have to take into consideration, and
And so, talking about the marketing side of things, obviously you got a team who help with the Prize stuff, and the Idle. It's you and another guy. But is your approach with how you communicate what you're doing and what's going on very different, or do you follow similar kind of steps and processes with that?
So Idle Forest piggybacks on Prize, right? So Prize is like the base. If without Prize, you wouldn't have Idle Forest. And so, if you look at the main focus of the brewery, it's really about, being the beer in your refrigerator. It's really about being your go-to beers, which is why you can't really change that label or that branding so much. So I would say that, it's really like one is a ton of work or lots of hours, and then the other one is really just about organic growth. And so Idle Forest like wins tons of awards, right? And that brings lots of interest, and then that makes it, because those I can play with all the time, and they're crazy and innovative and all that fun stuff. Where Prize is like, we try to define it and make it so that things aren't confusing when you look at them. Like Idle Forest, you have to look at what you're getting, right? Like this is this, and it visually looks different, or like this is what is in this. Where Prize is more like the easier go-to. Like this is what I want. This is what the Pilsner I want. I just want something I don't want. I guess you can also define it like this too. Is that Idle Forest, when you have one, you're going to talk about the beverage with somebody that you're with, right? Mm-hmm. When you're with Prize, sometimes you want a Pilsner, and maybe you don't want to talk about the beverage. Maybe the people you're with don't care about that. But like, it's very different. And then like, there is lots of relatable qualities that like we can talk about hops and stuff like that, and or like, the minerality in a beer. But usually when you have something that's just easier drinking or less less complex. Typically doesn't have to require that many kind of thoughts. So it's kind of like the basis line of understanding the drinker, understanding who goes to what things, and also really understanding how this industry has changed and what people are really looking for. And, you have THC beverages, you have well, you can just kind of take it like, beer came out, beer got huge, and then other offerings came out like seltzers or smoothies, then seltzers, and then smoothie seltzers, and then THC beverages. And then so all of those have taken people out of, if you have 100% of consumers and then you take out chunks and chunks and chunks, the big group is much smaller. I would say that, there's still just as many people consuming alcohol that there was. There's just new people also like within the generations that are coming to consume things, and there's just more offerings. So it means that some of the new consumers might take one of those new things that have came out within the time. And so, the playground is big and there's lots of toys. And so people can just kind of, pick to choose what they want to do. And when you come up with something, you're really kind of just trying to, give somebody a better experience. I often talked about how when somebody when they're like, do we like hamburgers? I love hamburgers, right? And they're like, yeah, but there's not just one place that makes a hamburger. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, cool, well, that place makes a good hamburger too. I'm like, well, with all their other offerings at their restaurant, I bet you all the other food is good too. And so what we've really seen is that if people like Prize and they like our Pragmatic or our Miraculum or whatever, or Mass Hysteria, that they'll be like, cool, I wonder what else they have too. And if they do this really well, I bet you they do that really well. And so there's this organic build that one supports the other, because ultimately it is the same company, but it's different branding of difference and growth.
And so to me, it sounds like if I were in your position, I would have these two brands battling for dominance in my head every day. How easy is it to switch from Prize to Idol, brain mode? Can you just swap a hat and you're good to go, or does it get confusing?
Swap a hat, because they're in my opinion, they're very different. They're both a beverage, but if you work in the beverage world or live in the beverage world, they're very different things, right? One, you can obviously tell which one I'm more excited to talk about, because it's so crazy. It's
take a guess, I can work it out.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's just there's such a difference in such a again, the biggest differences between the brand is one is really done to be exactly what it's supposed to be, the same experience every single time, and then one can go wherever it wants to, and it's not supposed to be the same, even though you're doing the same thing year to year. It's just very different. And so that exploration is always it's like an adult Christmas present. I'm like, oh man, it turned out great. I'm like, this is so good. Oh, there's more character this time. There's more fruit, or maybe there's less fruit and it's more dry, or this one on the Prize side of things, I need that Pilsner to taste exactly the same every time. You can tweak stuff based upon seasonal change of organic products, but really it's about the same thing, repeatable process all the time. And how much can I just keep going and keep pushing the same thing all the time? And because I brew Prize beer Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, then I come to Idle Forest and I'll do whatever's required, whether it's a blending day or a packaging day or a label day. They're all lots of things, or a transportation day. That's kind of the variable day where, I hurt my hands or whatever I'm doing, it's part of it. Or maybe that day is actually going to pick apples and just listening to the farm as you're sitting there pulling grapes off. So it's just a different experience all in all. And, it's neat. And they're both fantastic for their own worlds, but they're both a very separate experience for myself as well.
And when do you think, in your opinion, when is a good time to separate a brand versus keep it under the same roof? Because you're saying about the consistency of Prize and then the spontaneity of Idle Forest, but I'm wondering if a brewery goes, oh, this is a bit funky, this is a bit different to what we normally do, is that justifiable in your mind to break away, or what would your approach be?
So it's a really good question. I think it's probably one of the best questions, because imagine if somebody had a wine hybrid and it said Prize on it, and they're like, oh man, this is not my thing. They may never try another Prize beer again. And so they'll have all the judgment on the brand, and that's not what Prize Brewing is, right? And so the judgments, whether they're good or bad, will stay within that brand. It's kind of like starting a company, and having everything in an LLC. You keep everything and then keep all my home stuff alone. It's kind of the same thing. Like you're just like you're like, I want like the characters, the difference in flavor are that significant that I want somebody to say, dude, your Idle 4 series is so good. It's like this and this identified looking. I mean, we have bottles at some of our restaurant partners and our liquor store partners. And so like, but if that was like, if they didn't have a good experience, like that would actually hurt Prize. And if people at Prize be like, I never knew, like I get it all the time where they're like, I didn't know Prize had this program. This is amazing. And there's no bad that can come from it. But I think that anything that I'm pushing those lines, those beers are, if people know what Lambic and Goose are, it's like one of those things that like, well, I think it's like heaven for me and all my friends. Somebody is just like, I just want a Bud Light or something. I just want something that's not, it's like on the opposite end of the spectrum of flavor. Yeah. And so like, I think it's smart to separate them. I'd say if you're going to do something like this, if you wanted to come out with a product like this or some kind of innovation thing, I think it's totally fine to do, one and done or something like that. But if you want to kind of build that brand, I think that for me personally, I saw that as something that, and really just, you can do comfortable beers, like do raspberries and cherries and creeks and framboise, but like I want to do more than that. And so I wanted to make sure that was, celebrated by itself and kind of celebrated in the wow, that's cool, that's there, but not in the judgment to go the other way, because again, Prize was all about consistency and clean and really just it's just a different brand for me. And for me, it was just kind of like a no-brainer.
No, I didn't think about it that way. There is almost like a protecting what you've built and not tarnishing, because you don't set out to do anything bad. But you're right. If someone has a bad experience on the crazy wacky experiment, they're like, nope, not touching that again. So yeah, I can completely see if you want to go bold and brave, have like at least a sub brand or call it like the experimental release, so people are very clear.
Some kind of buffer in there.
Yeah, just to give a bit of separation. A minute ago, you talked about supplying some restaurants with the Idle Forest stuff, and I was wondering your route to market. So who you're picking, like where you're sending the Prize stuff to, and where you're sending the Idle stuff to. Are they two very different markets that you're engaging with? Is there a lot of overlap at times as well?
It's all overlap. So like Prize is everywhere. Like they're like for beers that approachable beers that people can just like dive into and be like, I want an IPA. Boom, here's an excellent IPA. Or you want this excellent barrel aged, British Imperial Stout, like whatever it is. And then you're like, I want something fruity. And then you have like our Royal Raspberry Sour. We have a Royal series in which I take and do kettle sours basically, and then I add fruit to them and basically blend up what our sour base is. And so we're like, like peach and blueberry, all the things that are nice and tart that kind of go with that. And so that's kind of like people getting into like the sour realm. And then when they want more depth of flavor, like restaurants that have more of a bottle service or are known for like pet nats and stuff, that's when I'll bring in the Idle Forest. And that seems to make the consumer really happy, just having those offerings.
Nice. That's very cool. That must be a really interesting conversation to have, like to judge, like, yeah, you guys are ready for Idle, or you can't handle Idle. Like,
yeah. Because I mean, and like out in the open, when you look at the masses, it's your best test market, and like it probably does the best at Prize Brewing, I'd say, amongst all of them, because it doesn't have a lot of branding behind it, and it's fairly new. That like it's also the industry that we're in, particularly like I've had lots of leaders in this industry be like, if this beer if you were doing this like 10 years ago, he's like, people would be lining up for it. He's like, right now with all many offerings, like it's just one of those things that, those things happen organically and slow. And hence why I'm at Prize, 90% of the time. And then I'm still able to do this and create this project and, like really take it as much as I want to innovate and take it to the next step.
And obviously the scale of the two operations must be pretty different as well. So do you lean into and leverage like that scarcity and the limited nature of what comes with Idle, where you're like, we've only got X amount of bottles, and once they're gone. Right.
It's like 20, 25 cases. That's it. When it's gone, it's gone. And that if I were to, so based upon how much we go through every month, which changes all the time, but if I were to do bigger releases, that means that we'd have less variables, right? Like we'd have less varieties to be able to release. And so the general rule is that every time I produce a batch, I just probably just I do enough that I'm like, I kind of get like to 20 to 25 cases, and that sustains everything. And so that means like every quarter I can put a new batch in there, and every given time I'll have like 3 or 4 different brands in Idle Forest being released. And so basically it's like a bottle service in the tap room. And again, like it's nothing compared to Prize. I mean, like in a day's time, I'll have like, 25 cases done, and I'll be like just winded. But like at Prize, it's 100 cans per minute. It's like,
it's night and day, isn't it? Completely different.
Yeah.
On the Idle side of things, like how many of those are already scooped up before they're out the door? Like, do you get people like reserving and kind of saying
we don't do that. We just kind of like, it's hard to manage that because again, we're mostly Prize. And so basically when one brand goes out, then we'll do a social media post, and then I'll do a post and be like, hey, this thing came up, and then I'll make my Untapped if I have time, and then we'll kind of go that way. So it's more of like a social media post than like doing like an event behind it. And that's based upon like how many people really identify with it, and we know that based on the numbers. Now if we sold 25 cases in a weekend, well then we'd be like, cool, then we know that there's enough support behind it, and then we would make more instinctual or purposeful posts and do like an event behind it. But I would say that until it really takes off organically, we're putting a lot of our attention and a lot of our energy towards the things that that give us jobs and give us a reason to be in production and building experience for people. I mean, if you look at what the brewing industry is at a whole, we are creating experiences as a beverage company. You can call yourself a brewery, but we're really creating experiences, and different experiences apply to different people. And we complement the highs and the lows of everybody's days. And we try our best to do world-class stuff, and we invest in ourselves and in our equipment to make sure that those things are being brought to people in the best way possible that we can. And
dude, I'm just wondering, so if you're having a chat with a brewer and they're like, Jeremy, I think it's time. Like I'm going to start a second one. It just feels right. It's a little bit different. I want to experiment. I want to give this a go. Like, what would be your top pointers to that brewer who's going to go out there and try and make a second brand?
Well, I mean, it's tough. I would definitely make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, if you will, first. And then I would say, like, I had my whole plan already written up, and I'd say that I often go back to that plan to make sure that I'm staying on track. Because it's a big deal. It's a totally separate thing, and it's making it right. So if you wanted to start something, I would, just like making the business that they're operating right now or whatever they're doing, I would make sure that, giving just cause is I would list out the things, ideas for something I'm going to do, and then I would work against that to achieve that. And then from that, pick out what you've learned over the past year, and then make changes or define your process the best, because your process is going to be different from my process, and do it something that's achievable, and that not something that's crazy, right? Like, I wish I could do this 5 days a week, but I can't, right? Or I wish I could have plant a peach farm. Like, I wish I could have all my own peaches, but that's unfortunately not going to happen. There's only so many hours in the day. So like, I think making processes and things that are achievable, that are realistic, and then knowing that you have variables every year, and just knowing that you're going to continue to learn and push towards something, and then also respecting everything that you do to make that possibly happen those are probably the best things of advice that I've learned personally, and in trying to get this to stay afloat all the time. And so,
love it. And I suppose, in terms of, was it a natural, your thought process, just going back to the labeling and the level of how it really does reflect the process and the brewing side of things? Is there any recommendations around that in terms of, like, the different type of drinker and how you're serving it in the glass and all that stuff? Did you do a lot of research for that beforehand, or was it more natural?
Though, I mean, that was a ton of research. Like, not really research, like, we'll call it personal research. Like, like, does this work for label? Like, a big thing on the labels is, like, everybody's trying to get everybody to print on vinyl labels now. But like, when you look at the vinyl label, because you can have metallic on it, they're way cheaper, they're digitally printed, so you can have you don't have to, like, there's no press, like, you just have to, like, do this. And like, I think that if you did vinyl personally on a bottle, I think it just looks like, it doesn't give you, if you look at it, it just doesn't give you the same excitement to what it is. And so that's where, if you look, my labels are really expensive because they're on linen stock and they're like really expensive. But when you feel it and you look at it, you kind of see, it feels like 2.5 years. It feels like this beer has taken so long and that no detail was underturned. I just think that all those little details in, like, whatever you're selling your product for, like I also put like a little metallic thing in here so that it's Idle Forest, so there's a difference. And so it's like the linen stock, that the fact that it's pressed on there and it's printed with a printer that can do the fine detail that's in the drawing is a big deal. It's just like all those things. Like I took my label to a different printer that were just like a faster turnaround time. And I noticed that it just wasn't the best detail. And so we switched from that printer back to our original printer. And now we know we just have to wait 3 weeks.
It's got to be more organized, right?
But there's a lot of things like that. Or like the bottle, it's a bottle condition. So the bottle has a punch to the bottom of it. And so like that means that after it bottle conditions, it creates a thicker layer in the punch. And so that when you pour it, more stays in the dents. But if it was a flat bottom, it would kind of slush more. And so you just kind of like learn all this stuff. And like, and I greatly have to thank all my friends in Belgium for taking me under their wing and hanging out with everybody and being like, how they do things and why. And really just like being like, once you connect the thought and you're like, totally makes sense. This has been thought, this is the reason why they've been doing things for so long. And so like those things really help develop it. And also it's a respect to what they're doing. I mean, these are American, or these are, Belgian influenced goose made here in America. And so they've been doing it for so long and they're the masters at what they do. And so just knowing like, based upon the grist or the bill to make it, to the aged hops, to the bottles they're using, or, using a basket to pour it, to decant it. And so like a lot of those things are just really, really awesome. And they're historic. Like, and so all those things, the respect for the history, and we'll call it our seniors, all those things make, this project really fun. And, again, at Prize, like we're stainless. It's stainless. It's clean. It's nothing in there. It's perfect. It's like, everything's just paint the same picture every time. And that's the goal of it. And both of them are meeting their goals, and both of them make my ADHD pretty happy.
I think the thing that I'm taking away from this is it's not just the level of care that goes into the brewing on either side, but it's the level of care across the board, from knowing like who the drinker is, what the type of label needs to be, the type of bottle, how it's served. Like if you care so much about the liquid that's going in the tank and out the tank, that same level of care needs to be applied across every other bit that's going to contain it, because that's where the story is. That's how you bring it all to life and actually make other people who are then going to be drinking it and enjoying it care about it as much as you do.
That's right. That's right. And because you know what? One, they're still all Prize. So you do something bad over here, it's going to affect Prize. You do something at Prize, it's going to affect Idle Forest. So like, I mean, it's a great thought. Like everything has to be professionally done. It's weird. I've been in this industry now for like 14 years. Like, it's like, at what point do you call yourself a professional? I'm like, fine. Like there's like, everything is professionally done. And what does professionalism mean? It means a thought out process, a repeatable process, even though the product's not repeatable. Like it's just, everything's thought out ahead of time. And it's the respect for the drinker and respect for what we're doing and the industry as a whole. And we often tell ourselves at Prize, like, we are here to represent the best of craft beer in Minnesota. And that's kind of what our homage is. So
love it, my man. Jeremy, this has been an absolute awesome chat, and as we said it would do, the time has flown by, my man. I can't believe we've hit the 45-minute mark.
It's like we just started.
So if people want to check out your work, see what you're up to with Prize, see what you're up to with Idle, like where are the best places to see the work and get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course, Facebook, Prize Brewing, PRYES Brewing, and then Idle Forest is IDYLL Forest.com, or on Instagram, Idle Forest Artisan Ales on Instagram. And just check us out on the socials. It's the best way if you're in the area. We also we're the largest only self-distributed brewery in the state of Minnesota. So that means that we are a destination brewery, and we see it that way. So if you want to have it, you have to come to Minnesota at Prize Brewing. And then Idle Forest has plans in the future. We'll see what happens about getting to a bigger market, but all that stuff is in the works. But definitely I encourage you to try it, and I'm pretty reachable, so just feel free to reach out to me and any one of those social things, and it's great. I love talking about it.
Dude, amazing. I'm gonna have to book my flight over and come and check this out for myself sometime. It's gonna be
Come hang out.
Dude, thank you once again for taking the time to chat to me, buddy, and everyone who's taken the opportunity to tune in, listen, or listening back at this whilst making their deliveries in the vans. I love you all. You rock. You're amazing. If you love this show, if you want to hear more incredible, intelligent, attractive people just like Jeremy talk about how to improve your brewery, just search Branding for Breweries on your favorite streaming platform. You'll find it. You'll recognize me as the hat and the beard. You can't go far wrong. But until next time, everyone, thank you so much. You rock.